everybody. I am so honored to be here, and this is a completely auspicious time to be talking about the three powers of light, because when most of us look outside these days, especially when we're coming home from work and wanting to make dinner and put our feet up, guess what we see but more darkness. And it's very easy to just believe that that darkness, whether we see it on the outside or feel it on the inside, is what is really reality. But it's not. In the beginning was light, and light was good. And everything was made of the light, including you, including me, including all of us, including everything that determines our reality. However, what I want to talk about is the scientific fact that actually there are three different types of light, each with their own special type of power, which we can access to create the type of miracles that we're really looking for, but very different types of miracles. As I talk about these three different types of light, I will stop every so often to feature teachings from two of the greatest sages that I have worked with. One is the Master Jesus, who I have studied, but the other is my son, Michael, who actually 28 years ago told me in different words that there are three types of light. And it just took me about 27 years and 27 books to catch on to that. I woke up one morning full of jitters. I was so nervous because it was Michael's first day of kindergarten. And either you remember your first day of kindergarten or you remember your children's or your grandchildren's, but there's almost nothing scarier than those first few years of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to drop my child off and what's going to happen? I fussed and I fussed and I fussed, and he finally looked at me and goes, Mom, I got it. So I dropped him off. I was nervous the rest of the day. At the end of the day, I picked him up and I said, so how is kindergarten? And Michael said, actually, he asked, maybe I would even say he demanded, do I have to go back? And my stomach sunk. I asked him, well, yeah, but why? And he said, all we did was color. I already know how to color. About 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting in the kitchen and Michael comes in with one of those fantastic, I still am searching for an even bigger, collection of the 64 Crayola crayons, plops them in front of me. And he says, Mom, I figured school out. I know what they're teaching me, but I've also figured out the two things they're not teaching me. And I asked him, well, what are they teaching you? And he said, they're teaching me how to color inside of the lines. And I thought, well, yeah, they are. And I said, so what aren't they teaching you? He said, well, they're not teaching me how to color outside of the lines. And you have to do that if you're going to make anything new. And he said, they're also not sharing with us that you don't have to color with the same colors everybody else is. You can pick up and use different colors. Well, what are colors but emanations of the light? And without knowing it, Michael was talking about the three fundamental types of light that if you look in the scientific journals clearly enough, scientists are cluing us into. The first type of light, the one that you have to color inside of the lines to make work for you, is polarity light. From a scientific perspective, polarity light exists because everything here basically has its opposite. It's the story of the yin and the yang. And from a molecular and atomic point of view, we know that this is what makes the world go round because, for instance, you take an electron, which is negatively charged, it's always linked to a positron, which is positively charged. And who amongst us hasn't experienced the fact of the everyday world being full of opposites? Doesn't it seem like when a good thing happens, pretty soon there's a not so good thing? That when there's light, it's followed by darkness. That if you want to make something happen, you have to put in an equal, but actually even greater amount of energy to push and to drive and to create something new. We tend to think of miracles as fairly non-existent in this sort of a universe. You have to earn them, You have to make them happen. You have to go to surgery to get the tumor cut out. You have to exercise a lot to get muscles, and you actually really do, as my baseball playing pitcher college son is constantly telling me when he's working out and I'm actually not very often. But there's a story in the New Testament about Jesus and a miracle that adds another color, one of those beautiful new color crayon hues to the story of this world of polarities that suggests that with a couple sort of shifts of the mind, we can actually create the miraculous in this world of polar opposites, where light and dark coexist because if you can't see the darkness, you really can't see the light. I know we've all heard it, but it's really very true. After John the Baptist died, Jesus was sad and he was sort of like, I got to get away from all this. We know how that feels. And we also know that it doesn't really happen. I've been a mom. I've had toddlers. They don't leave you, especially when you're trying to go to the bathroom. Even my dogs follow me into the bathroom now, and they're like 11 years old. But I've got to get away. So we got into a boat, went to a secluded place, and there were already people there. And so Jesus, being Jesus, probably sighed, rolled his eyes upward to the skies, and gave in, just kind of like we do when those emails are pursuing us. And he said, all right, what? Let's have some conversations here. The disciples pointed out that these 5,000 or so people, however, were hungry. There weren't any restaurants around where Jesus had taken himself to. So Jesus, taking what could be gathered of the loaves and the fishes, gave thanks to the one and multiplied the loaves and the fishes to feed not just a few people, but what seemed to be, from accountings, 5,000 people. He gave gratitude because he felt compassion for these needs that I would say are related to the polarity universe, the one of physical matter, where you need to follow the rituals of the body. We need to feed ourselves. We need to do the dishes. We have to show up for work, and we need the energy to be able to do this. But what Jesus revealed to us through that undertaking is, with gratitude and coming from compassion, there can actually be more appearing in the light than we notice in the dark. We can actually create more light. We can attract more of what we need. We can do more than we think we can do with that gratitude and that compassion. The second type of light that scientists have pinpointed are virtual particles or virtual light. And maybe we've been hearing that term, maybe you haven't. It's come up with some of the investigations into what occurs in a vacuum state, in the void state, in these states of nothingness that seem to not only exist in, like black holes, but even in aspects of ourself. Yeah, there's voids or vacuums inside of our own bodies. And science has been showing that the vacuum, which we used to think was absolutely nothing, is actually full of unlimited possibilities. And don't we all need possibilities and even probabilities to move forward in our life? Well, virtual light are possible lights. They're actually technically called transient quantum fluctuations. And I practice saying that in front of a mirror many, many times. So what does that mean? It means that sort of popping in and out of what hasn't ever been manifested or hasn't become real in our life are suggestions, are little question marks or exclamation marks that say, there's something new that could happen. And science is showing that when these little virtual particles pop in, they disappear, they cancel other particles out, but they also change what's in 3D polarity, this physical reality. They leave a shadow, they leave a light on, they give us another thought, an idea, and a choice. And from a point of view of being a healer, I work with virtual mechanics or this virtual idea all the time, because most of what doesn't happen in our life fails to exist. There's a lot of double negatives for you because we really don't believe that it can. Because we don't understand that if we just wear different eyeglasses, if we change our perceptions, if we stop believing what everybody else says is accurate, what everybody says is concrete and real, tumors have to be cut out, and or when they get to a certain point, you're done. If we just suspend the polarity, if we use gratitude and compassion, but go another step, again, we alter perception and reality changes itself. The 3D alters itself. What happened in Jesus's life that reveals this? He was in a crowd and he felt energy leaving his garment. And in my version of the Bible, it actually says the word energy, which I think is super cool. And he looked back and he sees a woman who had touched the hem of his garment. This was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. So she was considered unclean, one of the untouchables. She was not supposed to touch people, and nobody was supposed to touch her. And he looked at her. She had touched him. She had broken the cardinal sin of that particular polarity world. And he said, "What have you? What are you desiring?" She said, "I knew if I could just touch the hem of your garment, your energy could heal me. You could heal me." And he looked at her and he said, "Your faith has made you well." The polarity can be changed by the virtual when we shift our perspectives to one of faith, to the miracles of truths that are higher than any laws that Newton invented when the apple hit him on the head. And his mother, I think, made apple pie out of it because she was probably quite industrious. It's the virtual that gives us new chances and new opportunities. I'm going to give you an example from my many experiences as a baseball mom that can show you what's possible if you just shift the eyeglasses or the lens, the colors of the lens on your eyeglasses. Gabe, my youngest son, was home like all college kids were for about 6 to 7 months when COVID shut down. And, baseball players have to keep working out. So we converted my gym, goodbye cars, and it was still snowing. So they got snowed on. We converted my garage into a gym. And he and all these baseball dudes worked out through March all the way back till school started. And he hit a snag in his pitching. He said, "Mom, will you come and work with my coach with me? Because I just can't get faster than 88 miles an hour. I'm just sort of stuck." And during the spring, he'd been hitting far faster than that. So 7 in the morning, because I work really early, I went there to this other garage and he's pitching and he's not really on one of these gizmos and gadgets getting faster than 88 miles an hour. And he said, "Mom, what do you think's going on?" And I looked at him with my keen, intuitive eyes. And I said, "I think you're pitching through the perspective, through the lens of some of your ancestors. I think you're kind of in this place that you're holding on to and pitching from some of the beliefs that are like, you're bound to fail, you're not going to make it, this and that." He goes, "Well, what am I supposed to do about that?" And I said, "Well, why don't you just decide that the opposite is true? If that can be true, so can be the perspective that, hey, I can pitch as fast as my arm is able to pitch." So he goes, "Okay, I'm going to try it." The gizmo was on. He threw his next ball 93 miles an hour in velocity. It went up that much. And then he went up actually a full 8 miles an hour because he changed his perspective. Virtual reality, shift your perspective, and this world of seeming opposites bends to that which is potentially able to be created. There's a third type of light. This is my favorite to talk about. One scientist called it absolute light, so that's what I now, in my own head, call it. It's a light in which there is no darkness. It's the type of light that doesn't seem to have any opposites. It only creates matter. And it only creates, I believe, or innovates that which actually does matter. So we know that there's this absolute light. And really, honestly, it really is just this light that has no opposite. Because scientists are starting to suggest, now some of us already knew this, that there was something before the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. And it really was constructed from, and maybe is still constructed from, a sort of pure, absolute light, just light. I like to say just love. And this type of light still lingers in this polarity or oppositional universe. There's twists of this light in space that don't move. They're there. They just simply don't fluctuate. There's also this sort of hum or cosmic background radiation or electromagnetic activity that itself never fluctuates. To me, this is the light of the absolute. This is the heavenly light. This is that which we go to when we come from the truth of being spiritual beings. I myself had an experience with this light many, many, many years ago. I only had my oldest son, Michael, and I was really working a lot, overworked, and the only time off I ever took was to, and this is sort of sad, was to get in my car and drive to a cabin on the Mississippi River and to mow the lawn and then to drive home. Okay, but it worked for me. And so, one, midday, Michael's spending the night at a friend's house. I rode to the cabin, I mowed the lawn, I'm coming back, and I was drinking a little bit of Diet Coke. Okay, I mean, not the world's worst sin. On the way back, and suddenly, like I'm just cruising along at however fast you're supposed to go, this light enters through my windshield and it pretty much darn knocks me blind. I shake, I pull off the road, I sit there and I said, "What was that?" And I heard this voice say, "It's me, God." I'm like, okay, I don't know. That was darn scary. And I asked aloud, "Well, what are you doing?" And the voice said, "Well, I am love." It was this white light. And as we're apt to do, within a couple minutes, I had told myself that didn't happen. Too much caffeine, too much aspartame. I got back on the road and I'm driving along a little jittery, kind of like when it was Michael's first day of kindergarten. And then I felt Jesus, the master teacher, entering me through the back side of myself. And I again freak out and I pull off the road and I can still feel this presence inside of me. And I say, "What do you want?" And he says, "Let me show you how I see the world." And I saw the world as just white. Everything was light, everything was good. Years later, I came to understand that that is or was and has always been the absolute light. It's the purity. It's all that is. Ever since then, my personal goal has been to perceive myself, others, everything, the entire world through those eyes, through the eyes of the absolute light. Sometimes I succeed. When I do that, honestly, miraculous events occur. And even when it's ordinary, like I'm, kind of eating lunch, I enjoy the lunch much better. Everything becomes that which is what was in the beginning, the light and love, because that really is what is. Three types of light: polarity, which we can manifest through beautifully with gratitude and compassion; virtual, which merely requires that we change our eyeglasses to create new possibilities; and the absolute, which is love, which is what we are and what we're made out of and all that there is. And so really the world isn't much different than what Michael showed it to be 28 years ago. It's a world where we can color inside of the lines and be great and create great things. We can color outside of the lines. We can go virtual. And make new things happen, and we can just change the colors at will because they're really all that light. They're all the absolute. So go and enjoy in this time and in this season the truth of being three different types of light.